Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name.
Hi there, and welcome to the Hard Sell Arms and Flag and Lion, Zoke, and so on and so forth. I've tackled beer before, but then I was mostly concerned with the three most popular brands in Heineken, Carlsberg and Carling. But those are just the tip of the iceberg. There are acres of forgotten brands. Back in the day, until the late 80s or so, the market was absolutely heaving with sickly pale, flavourless lagers of 3.2 alcohol by volume, because English people are massive pussies. You know the sort of thing. Brewed for approximately 11 minutes, so any vague sense of malt or hops are very much secondary to the great taste of carbon dioxide. To sell this unappealing mixture, twats, occasionally dressed as animals. Incidentally, since I made the first one, I've become aware of a rumour that the first few George the Bear adverts were in fact the last directorial works of Orson Welles. Not true, as far as I can tell. But the point is that once there were loads of interchangeable gassy lagers that British people bought because they didn't know any better. Decidedly unglamorous, resolutely working class, and their advertising, in the 70s and early 80s at least, followed suit. They always seemed to take place in the same dimly lit public house, full of sideburns men in mohair and polyester, usually with pronounced proletarian accents, which because of the pool of acting talent at the time were generally fairly obviously put on.
This is where we ensure the consistent character and brilliance of Kestrel Lager by means of sampling.
I've had plenty of experience.
Good. Can you start Monday?
Can't I start now?
Jack, what you doing?
Spot of overtime.
Kestrel, the thinking man's lager.
Beyond those elements, however, the form tended to vary. After all, the lagers themselves, all being made the same half-assed way, were all but identical in all respects except the colour of the can. The adverts and packaging had to make them stand out because literally nothing else about the damn stuff did. As they used to say in the biz, Nis, people didn't drink lager, they drank advertising. Sometimes there was wordplay based on the brand name, as with faux Swedish brew Skol.
Harry has 8 cans of Skol. He drinks one himself, then gives one each to Bert and Jack. Then Jim pops in with 4 more cans, but he's brought Val and Samantha with him, and they all have one each. Then Paul and Malcolm turn up with a couple of friends, and they drink another 4. Being a scholar, Harry has calculated that he's still able to enjoy a quiet can of Skol and give Samantha one.
Oh yeah, I forgot. As well as the sideburns and the mohair and the ICI fabrics, there was one other element that was absolutely immutable, even more so than the darkened wood-panelled pub setting. And that was casual sexism.
And give Samantha one.
Her.
When you know lager, you're a scholar.
Anyway, word problems are no fun. So back to the pub for a slightly different spin on the same pun.
At this particular seat of learning, there are all kinds of scholars. Scholars of aerodynamics.
57.
Scholars of mathematics.
87.
Scholars of music. There are even scholars of diplomacy.
Pint of Skol, please. Make that 2 pints.
But there's one subject all scholars enjoy studying.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
When you know lager, you're a scholar.
See, the thing about the scholar wordplay is that it's less clever and useful than it looks or sounds. they basically use up the two possible spins on the phrase already without doing anything particularly interesting with either. Soon they were reduced to depicting skull drinkers as omnipotent alien mega beings. The voice of Tom Baker does undoubtedly help this premise go down.
With his familiar pint of skull, Trevor looks like a normal scholar, but he is in fact a hyper-intelligent mega being from a distant galaxy, which means he can score 180 at darts. With his eyes closed. Beat the Space Invaders at their own game.
I love this bit.
Oh no, it's Trevor.
The mighty Trevor. Vast armies tremble in his wake. In the wake of Trevor. They could at least have called him Darth Trevor or something.
He can even transmit telepathic commands.
2 pints of skull.
I very old great one.
Naturally, Skull can't turn you into a hyper-intelligent mega being with superpowers.
Well, then what the fuck good is it? The 3.2 proof doesn't even get you drunk fast. It better give you omnipotent superpowers, or frankly there's no reason for it to exist at all.
But when you know lager, you're a scholar.
Here's a simpler example of brand name wordplay, which has an interesting story attached to it. Well, interesting if you're into the history of beer manufacturing.
Have you got the answer?
If I had, would I be standing here? Have you got the answer?
Depends what your problem is, love.
Have you got the answer?
No, I'm stuck at 8 down.
Have you got the answer?
Don't ask silly questions.
Hansa Lager beer. Authentic Dortmunder flavor. You have the Surst, we have the Hansa.
Hansa Lager is not to be confused with the products of the actually Danish brewery of the same name. This stuff comes from then independent Cameron's brewers of Hartlepool. You know, where they hung a monkey once. Hansa Lager was launched in the UK in 1980, licensing the name from Dortmunder Actium Brauerei, with the gimmick of being a lager, but also not sucking. A lot of brands made that claim, of course, and Hansa's working involved the use of bottom cropping rather than top cropping yeast, which apparently means that at the end of the brewing process, the residuals sink to the bottom rather than floating to the top. And I have it on authority that this does make it taste nicer. It certainly made enough difference that Cameron's had to spend £2 million on new machinery, but on the upside, the campaign for real ale approved. Anyway, it paid off, because in the wake of this advertising campaign, Hansa managed to get hold of a whole 1% of the British beer market, which doesn't sound like a lot, but is actually pretty impressive for an indie producer operating out of Hartlepool, who barely own any pubs of their own. Let's hear it for vaguely existential wordplay. Back with some more of that bottom-cropping yeast. Oh, bite me. Hansa is also an example of another old trick standard lager used to use to seem vaguely impressive and or drinkable, and that's to acquire a German, or at the very least vaguely Germanic, name, so that it seems vaguely authentic and like a real beer someone from the continent might drink, even though the 3.2 standard lagers are a strictly British phenomenon. Teutonicness is an important touch, because Germans by stereotype know how to make beer. Even French brew Kronenbourg was writing its name in Frektur back in the early 80s, so that you'd associate them with the other side of the Alsace border. Another faux German brew was Hemmerling, although its advertising traded on a relatively clever visual pun.
Do some lagers taste soft around the edges?
I said relatively.
There's a harder edge to the taste of Hemmerling, because Hemmerling brew more sugar out, so there's more alcohol in. Result, a taste with a stronger, keener, harder edge. That's why Hemmerling has got the edge over soft lagers. It's the stronger taste. There's a harder edge to Hemmerling.
It's harder than you think to make a prop tankard made of plastic that still looks enough like the real thing to pull off the optical illusion. Lucky we still use tankards, actually. This would have been a nightmare to pull off with straight pint glasses. Anyway, the point is that Hemmeling is for real men, and other lagers are for pussies and women and pussies. Not that I want to play on your insecurities or anything, you pussy piss-drinking pussy, but drink Hemmeling, or you're a pussy. Inevitably, it barely, if at all, tasted any different to any other lager. It might have been brewed for slightly longer, but in practice that could just mean 20 minutes instead of the mere quarter hour. These standard lagers were barely brewed at all before being bottled, and they were never the rich golden brown that they appeared in the adverts. In fact, half of them were practically clear.
There's a harder edge to Hemmeling.
But soft. I said that sexism played a large part in the advertising for these products, and yet the last two I showed you were barely sexist at all. Well, first, don't ever contradict me, motherfucker. And second, the real kings of toxic masculinity in this sphere were Harp, originally created by the Guinness Company, hence the name. In this country it was made and sold under licence by Yam Yam beer maker Wolverhampton and Dudley breweries. For a time, in the 70s, it was the most popular beer in the country, and that was down to a combination of adverts like this and an abundance of its target market.
Up down at the local on a Saturday night. Met a girl from Birmingham and she was alright. She was very intellectual.
Don't much.
The way she ate her crisps had a feminine touch, but the gorilla that she had in tow was just a bit much. Harp, stay sharp to the bottom of the glass.
That target market, incidentally, is twats. Lots of twats about. Always have been, likely always will be. And Harp aimed at the twat audience with laser-targeted precision.
I said I was her brother, so we stayed and had another. The cool, fresh flavour didn't waver by a quaver. I said it was a pity, but we had to hurry home, 'cause her 80-year-old mother was all on her own. So she kissed him very nicely and said she'd phone. Harp, stay sharp to the bottom of the glass. Harp, stay sharp.
Harp, the lager for pricks, who are about to get the shit kicked out of them. It gets worse, though.
Your girlfriend's name was Beryl. She was always pretty keen. Looking in shop windows, well, you know what I mean. She was subtle and persistent, like a lot of their kind. I sort of got the feeling she had marriage in mind. She wanted the proposal, I proposed a stagger nine. Up, stay sharp to the bottom of the glass.
What a cockhole. And he's the audience identification figure. Drink Harp, be like this prick, die alone.
It was Harp the lads were quaffing, but Beryl wasn't laughing. The cool, fresh flavour didn't waver by a quaver. She said she wasn't happy, and couldn't I say that a pub was not the place to get down on one knee. Oh, extremely disappointed, I was forced to agree. Harp, stay sharp to the bottom of the glass. Harp, stay sharp.
This is another one that demonstrates the actual effect of what you might call political correctness. You couldn't make an advert like this these days, with a fuckhead like him as protagonist, because society tends to frown on being a massive self-obsessed bastard these days. Seems like progress to me.
I was drinking something lovely, and the girl just looked straight through me. So I had a pint of orc, and now she's gonna screw me.
But times change. As the 80s progressed, the British palate matured. Real actual lager of 5% or more alcohol by volume became increasingly popular. At the same time, advertising saw what you might call a renaissance in creativity. Ugly, sexist men in pubs didn't cut it quite so well anymore. More visible effort, more visual invention was going to be needed, even for the gassy piss waters like Kestrel and Skull. In fact, perhaps especially for them, because the market knows no mercy, and it was increasingly aware that your standard carbonated urine is not only less than pleasant, the differing brands are entirely interchangeable. By the mid-80s, people were increasingly wise enough to that fact not to be impressed by mere optical illusions and wordplay. Relative also ran the Mott, hit on a formula for success when they turned to Frank Frazetta.
Tradition tells of a Pils lager, and of a silent messenger's timeless search, his quest, that lager, the lager of Lamont. For a strong Pils with a taste beyond time, smoothness beyond dream. Seek out the lager of Lamont.
When I say prosecco, I mean as an aesthetic. This wasn't alas made by Frank himself, but by animator Tony White and then up-and-coming Aussie fantasy artist David Bergen. Even so, it's probably the most fucking epic advert ever made for carbonated urine, with the possible exception of the second one in the series.
Through the forests of time, a tradition persists of a silent messenger's quest for the smooth taste of a Pils lager, the lager of Lamont. For a strong Pils with a smooth taste, a taste beyond dreams. Seek out the lager of Lamont.
This heavy metal album cover imagery got Lamont noticed, to the extent that they were able to start selling it on draft. To advertise this, they changed tack slightly to post-apocalyptic live action, which was less impressive.
Seek out the draft lager of Lamont.
Still, I doubt the change of image is what brought an end to Lamont's success. More likely it was just the effect of more people buying and tasting it. Tony White remains a successful animator to this day. David Bergen appears to have disappeared off the face of the earth. Our old friend Skull dropped the scholar angle in favour of playing up their supposed Scandinavian heritage. They licensed the comic strip character Hagar the Horrible from his creator Dick Brown and hired squiggle vision expert Oscar Griot to make a set of amusing cartoon adverts starring him with the voice of Bill Wallace and most of his supporting cast.
Snert, nip out and get me a can of Skull. And don't forget the crisps. Skull, horribly good lager.
These actually made Skull halfway popular again, if it ever had been before, and was certainly funnier than the strip itself has been since Dick Brown died.
2 pints of Skull, a chicken biryani for you, sir, and for Hagar the Horrible, our house speciality, Arctic Moose Vindaloo, extra hot.
Toss of chili. Ooh, what's it like? Skull, horribly good lager.
In fact, it kind of makes you sorry there wasn't a whole Hagar the Horrible cartoon series made by Griot and starring Wallace. Oh well, there's always Hanna-Barbera's failed attempt starring Optimus Prime doing a Fred Flintstone impression. But the whole thing is basically the Flintstones with more beards and fewer rock puns. But ultimately, even Hagar was fighting a losing battle. 3.2 standard lagers couldn't have survived for long once the literally and objectively superior product got a foothold. The killing blow was dealt by one of the cleverest marketing campaigns of all time.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Je pourrais avoir un casse-croûte au jambon, s'il vous plaît? Ouais. Merci. Ça fait 10 francs. J'ai pas pris mon argent. Vous voulez... Ouais.
know it doesn't look that clever, but it really is. For a start, look how extremely French it all is. Based on the then recent Jean de Florette films, and even using part of its soundtrack, it's all rustic Provençal living. Unshaven Frenchmen in funny little hats, mules, rolling hills and square windows. And though there's full dialogue throughout, not a word or even a subtitle of English except for the slogan. All it needs is a wicker basket full of cheese and baguettes and a walk-on from Charles de Gaulle telling us all to fuck off to make it complete. And it's bollocks. Stella Artois is a Belgian lager, and not even Franco-Belgian, hailing from the staunchly Flemish area of Leuven. Despite this, thanks to this advert and the many, many more it spawned, Stella is considered twice as French in this country as the late Charles Aznavour in a beret chomping on a bulb of garlic. But that's nothing compared to the frankly jaw-dropping way they've pulled off the campaign's basic premise. Look at that slogan. Reassuringly expensive. It's easy to sell something on the basis that it's cheap. Making expensiveness into an advantage is like Inception. Not impossible, but bloody hard enough to make the premise of a film. Stella pulled it off by marrying it to this classy, continental, vaguely BBC Two late show aesthetic, by using gentle pastoral humour to make the point, and perhaps most importantly, by not actually being expensive at all. In fact, it's usually pretty cheap. But this advert is cheerfully pretending that it isn't, in order to make it seem more special, and as an irresistible bonus, you the customer likewise by association. It's really quite audacious, and especially impressive, that they succeeded. Chapeau off to the bastards. The reassuringly expensive campaign ran for another 10 decades or so, touching on various genres of French cinema in the process, and helping Stella Artois to become one of Britain's most popular beer or beer-like substances, right up there with Carling and Carlsberg. And that really was the death knell for the old standard lagers, at least in the mainstream. Names like Hofmeister, the Mott, Kestrel, and even Harp in the UK, although it's still going strong in Ireland, disappeared from shelves. Soon, only a handful remained, and them mostly just for the tax breaks. Skol, for instance, is still going, albeit now at a ludicrous tax-dodging 2.8 ABV, at which point you're frankly better off with a Shandy Bass. At least that has flavour, though I suppose if you're prepared to actually drink that stuff, you're past caring about flavour, or indeed alcohol by volume, and drinking out of a combination of chemical dependency, grinding poverty, and nihilistic despair. What a depressing note to end on. God. Fuck you all, I need a drink.
Where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Oh no, it's Grandma.
Hey you lovely people, thank you for watching. Do you want to see these things a week before anyone else? Do you want access to even more video essays, random musings, and absurdist close-down based humour? Do Do you want to read and help shape my new book about the history of the British Broadcasting Corporation? Do you want me to continue to have food and shelter? Well, consider that one a bonus. Support me on Patreon now. Only good can come of it. I promise.